Thank you ever so much for joining us today. I'd like to introduce Loren Busby. She's the entrepreneur in residence at Weill Cornell Medicine in New York. If you could just give an introduction, Loren, and a bit of an overview of your background.
Hi, Holly. Nice to be talking with you. So I've had a very long career in the venture capital industry, which I started right out of college. And I've worked with 3 different venture capital funds, some of them more generalist funds, but most recently a specialist fund focused on healthcare. And we were a transatlantic venture fund doing deals in both Europe and the US. And since that time, I have been working as a company operator in a number of different med device, digital health, and therapeutics businesses.
Okay. Could you tell me about some of the deals that you've worked on throughout your career in venture capital?
Yeah, happy to do so. I've been very lucky to be involved with a lot of smart people. And my career as a generalist gave me an opportunity to invest in a number of different interesting technologies. This was before I became a specialist.
Yeah.
And while I was working with a very generalist fund, I actually invested in a company called Americade, also known as Amerigroup, which was a managed care company focusing on seniors, the disabled, and low-income people. And I learned in that particular deal that you can actually make money in a capitated environment. And the investment was made in the mid-1990s. The company went public in the early 2000s. And in 2012, it was purchased by Anthem. So you can see that that was a successful deal. I was also involved early on in a company called SpectraCell Laboratories. And that was a spin out of some technology from the Clayton Foundation of Research in Texas. It was a proprietary blood test that measured functional intracellular deficiencies of vitamins, minerals, et cetera, and in individuals' metabolic processes. And that company is still alive today in Houston, Texas. When I was with the Transatlantic Venture Fund, we invested in an Israeli company called Sightline Technologies, and that was a flexible endoscope for colonoscopy procedures. That company was sold to Stryker in the mid-2000s. And finally, I would like to highlight a company called BioArray Solutions, which was a molecular diagnostic system for pre-transfusion characterization of blood samples. And that thankfully was sold to Immucor in the late 2000 period.
Great, impressive. And in terms of the therapeutics-based biotechs that you've worked with, have you done much there?
Yes, we invested quite a bit in therapeutics when I was with the Transatlantic Venture Fund. That wasn't an area where I specialized, but we did invest in a number of transactions there. I am currently working with a couple of therapeutics businesses out of Weill Cornell in the immunotherapy space, when it has a particular cardiac therapy for those who are on cancer treatments, and another company out of NYU that is working on protein therapeutics for different neurodegenerative diseases.
Okay, excellent. What have you seen of late in the industry then in terms of trends and any insight you can provide into the competitive landscape?
Yeah, the industry is it's coming off of COVID now, coming off of the COVID highs. Yeah. And what I was just reading about yesterday, in fact, in CV Insights, was that the transaction levels are falling. In other words, fewer number of deals are being done, but the values and the amount of capital being invested in those deals is really increasing. In some cases, deal volume by dollar was up by 25, 50, 75% in all areas: digital health, med devices, therapeutics, health IT. So I think what that says is investors consumed a lot of deals during the COVID time period when values were low, and it's very advantageous for them to do that. And now we're coming off of that big meal, and people are taking a look at what's in their current portfolio and saying, okay, these are the firms that I want to support, and they're putting big money behind those, what I'll call mid-stage deals.
Right. So less deals, but larger sums essentially, and a bit more aggressive landscape. Okay, interesting. And in terms of the opportunities or solutions that you've, or tools rather, that you've seen in the industry to provide women access to, you know, the tools themselves and also the chance to practice, you know, have you got any examples of that?
Yeah, well, we're working on a very innovative program right now at Weill Cornell Medicine. I work with the BioVenture eLab there, which is an accelerator for not only Weill Cornell Medicine, but for its sister organizations, Memorial Sloan Kettering and Rockefeller University. And with Weill Cornell, we have put together a 12-month program where faculty members and researchers participate in monthly seminars. And in those seminars, we're focusing on skill building for leadership skills, risk-taking skills, decision-making skills, and providing them an opportunity to practice those skills in a, let's call it a non-threatening environment, and to learn from others, other mentors who come to give talks. Myself and my colleague, Jahan Ali, also do practicums with them.
And what would you advise companies, for instance, that would like to do something similar or implement that into their own, you know, circumstances?
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot of resources. You can put this together in your organization, and it can benefit a lot of people. We've chosen to keep it small because it's our inaugural cohort, but it could easily scale. We've got 12 women, and it could easily scale to, say, 40 to 50 women if we had, you know, more opportunity to bring to them resources like mentoring and that kind of thing. Since it's just Jahan and myself, we've chosen to keep it small and intimate and test how this particular program works. At the end, we're having them conduct surveys, they do some journaling. It's a real learning experience. We want them to be able to practice what we're teaching them.
Yeah, well, it'll be exciting to see how that goes and what the feedback is. I guess one last question would be, have you got any advice for aspiring women in this space?
Yeah, you know, you and I have talked sometimes about specialist versus generalist backgrounds. Yeah. And I came up through the ranks as a generalist. It was a different time, though. At the time that I was getting involved in the venture world, industry resources were about 3.6 billion in total in the US. And now we see 3.6 billion funds. So it's a totally different environment. Yeah. In that sense, I think being a specialist is a differentiating factor for you, for women in science. Yeah. I think that's a differentiating factor. But I think you also have to practice some of the things that I've been talking about so that you can demonstrate your willingness to be on the cutting edge and be, if you want to work in venture capital, to be an investor and have those risk-taking skills, those decision-making skills. And you can do that through just making investments in the public market, getting involved with some volunteer organizations, getting involved in innovative projects within your organization that you work at right now, and, you know, really take on extra opportunities to build that skill set, build that toolbox.
Excellent. Well, that's great, and thank you ever so much for your time. It's excellent to have the insight of someone like yourself with such a long-standing and successful career. So thank you ever so much for your time and all of your help there. Thank you.
My pleasure.